All right. So I'm going to highlight you, Melissa. There you go. So what I'm going to ask everyone, and I'll have Melissa start, and you can introduce yourself, who you are, your when you graduated, and I'm curious. I think what's most helpful for students to hear about is um, from undergrad through kind of decision making into your career now, or if you're in school, kind of what helped you make that decision. So just hearing that a little bit, and then we can get, if people have specific questions, and I can pull the questions from the form after we hear from about half the speakers. So there you go.
Okay. Yeah, so I graduated from undergrad at Merrimack in 2022. I was a psychology major and a sociology minor. Um, and kind of along like the undergrad journey, I was very interested in education, very interested in teaching, kind of threw around like the teaching idea for a while, the school counselor idea for a while. But then I really kind of realized that, who my personality was not the type of person who was going to teach up in front of an entire class. And I really realized that I like thrived in one-on-one settings and sort of that space where I could kind of bring myself into it. And so I kind of slowly started to realize that I wanted to work with kids, and kind of still had that educational interest. And so kind of throughout undergrad, I did an internship at the May Institute, which is a day school program for kids on the autism spectrum. And so I was kind of just toying with like the educational piece. A little bit of the mental health piece in like a different way. I was doing a lot of like ABA, didn't really love like the ABA world, but loved working with kids. And so that kind of like solidified, okay, maybe I could see myself in a school, maybe I could see myself, in a one-on-one setting. And so kind of as I took more and more classes, I realized the education piece was like an interest to me, but that the therapeutic piece was more of like a passion. So um, when I went to grad school at Merrimack right after undergrad in the clinical mental health counseling program, and that sort of solidified like I love the one-on-one work, and I really still love like the integration of schools and mental health. I did my grad school practicum and internship at a therapeutic school, so a little more solidified than the May school, and thinking about, you know, s- how do children function in the therapeutic, space of a school like that. So that was really like the defining moment for me and kind of bringing both of the worlds together. And then I'm currently at a private practice in Amesbury, working with mostly kids, kind of on a lot of the same things that I worked at the therapeutic school, like emotional and behavioral dysregulation, a lot of like ADHD trauma, sort of, and connecting it all back to school. So it's kind of come like full circle. Because I still have that connection and communication with schools, but I'm doing the one-on-one um, work with the kids each day. So that's kind of how I got here and kind of how like I took the interest and then like merged it with the passion.
Awesome. Thank you. I like that. Pairing those is very important. We talk about that a lot, so that's great. I'm going to have Grayson next, and then there's some questions I think probably for everybody. So hold tight. I'm sure we'll have questions for you. Thank you. All right, Grayson.
Hello. I kind of missed like what we're saying. Are we just doing our little bio?
Yes, so I'd love to hear kind of
Okay.
from undergrad to now what you've been doing and also kind of how you came to decide, what
Okay.
direction to go in.
So I graduated Merrimack in 2022, and I spent a lot of time talking to Catherine and to Gwen about kind of what path I wanted to take if I wanted to do mental health counseling or social work. And I got encouraged to do social work for some of my interests, working with kids. And I kind of like popping around to different places. I don't really like being stuck in like one kind of spot. So they suggested I do social work because it gave me a lot of different options. So I immediately applied to get my master's at UNH for their online MSW program. I was working at the Center for Life Management at the time, and I ended up getting into the program, and I had two internships through that program. I worked at a behavioral health partial inpatient treatment center and also a school. So I had ended up doing Center for Life Management at that time because I didn't have time with my internships. And then I just graduated this past December, and I'm currently a home to school connect counselor, which is kind of like a fancy way of saying a school social worker. So I work with kids with school refusal, work refusal that are extremely behavioral, struggle with emotion regulation. And I kind of came here. I remember I took school social work at UNH and I didn't like it at all. I didn't like the class. I didn't like what I was doing in the class. And I was really bummed out because I always kind of knew I wanted to work with kids and I thought I was going to really like the school class. So then I decided to take the internship at a school and just kind of give it a second round. And I ended up falling in love with it. I really like my schedule and my age group. I'm currently in a middle school. I thought I was always going to end up in an elementary school, but I love middle school. And yeah, I was also, and this is like a good lesson, I guess, for everybody. In my little bio, it says that I was doing also psychotherapy after school. And I just recently decided to not take that route. So I signed with a company and then I actually decided to withdraw just for reasons like with the company I wasn't comfortable with. So just I did my own research and ended up withdrawing from that. So I'm currently fully just at the school.
That's good to kind of have people think about too, is sort of what
Mhm.
what aligns with what works for you, what aligns with your own kind of morals and ethics and all that good stuff. So, and also just the capacity for how much you want to work too
hmm hmm
is hard. And that age group is challenging. So, I feel like it's nice to have a balance.
Yeah.
And I didn't ask Melissa this, but I'll go back. I'm curious for you kind of what the day to day is like. I imagine it's not something that's the same every day, but what's sort of some of the day to day that you're doing at your job now?
So, given that I'm working with kids that have such strong behavioral and emotional needs, every day is so different. I'm the crisis call for about like 20 kids in the building. So currently my walkie-talkie's off and my door is locked because genuinely I would probably have already gotten like five calls and knocks on my door. It's a lot. It's so at a typical school, you would have a sixth, seventh, and eighth grade counselor. So we do have those, but then I'm technically the crisis counselor, so I'm the first line of defense. So day to day, I have kids scheduled for certain times. I have kids that come in and do check-ins, kids that come in for lunch bunches. Um, if those scheduled times happen as they're supposed to every single day, that's a miracle. But yeah, it's super intense, but it's you never get bored and the days fly by.
Yep, absolutely. That's great. Awesome. And do you collaborate with the other counselors there too? Often.
Yeah, so sixth, seventh, and eighth grade are mostly for like scheduling needs, things like that. They kind of deal with, like the friend drama and that kind of stuff and like social. And I'm more like things going on at home and things like that. So I definitely collaborate with them when it comes to like teachers or like how classes are going. And then I'm always in contact every single day with the BCBA. We might as well share an office. She's in here all day, every day. And then the director of special education as well. So um, I talk to them, collaborate with them basically all day.
Great. Great. Thank you. Melissa, could you tell us a little bit about your day to day? Because I didn't get to ask that part.
Yeah, so I work mostly with kids, so my hours are kind of different. So I work from 12 to 8 3 days a week, and then I do virtual 2 days a week. Um, and kind of like Grayson was saying, it's so different every day. I do a lot of like play therapy and art therapy, so it totally flies by, and honestly, it's fun. In addition to, like a lot of the dysregulation that occurs, a lot of, what I feel like I'm doing is what I really enjoy doing. And, sometimes like the end of the day comes and I'm like, this doesn't even feel like work. Like I enjoy like the planning part and like the prepping part and I know there's like such a stigma around like talking to parents, but I've really enjoyed like the collaboration piece of kind of meeting and working and being with, parents in that process too. So yeah, every day is a little different, but it's a little bit different that I work mostly like afternoons and nights
Fine.
with mostly kids, some teens, but a lot of what I do is younger kids and a lot of the play and art therapy on a day-to-day basis.
Great. Thank you. So just a reminder, if people do have questions, toss them in the chat so we can answer them. But I'm gonna jump over now to Anthony, who's in a different kind of stage. So he can tell us about what he's been up to since he left Merrimack or graduated from Merrimack, I should say.
Thank you, Katie. So yeah, my name is Anthony. I just graduated in 2024, under a year ago, and I am currently at Lesley University for clinical mental health counseling. Like in undergrad, I majored in psych and criminology, and I started with psych as a freshman, and then I did the whole year just psych, and then I was like, I wanted to do more with like the criminology side, so I added that double major. And was originally thinking I wanted to do like more like police work, FBI profiling, and then I was going through the program and I was thinking I want to do more of the psychology side of like counseling or just providing services. So I kind of went in that direction. I had a few internships. One was at a group home, St. Anne's Home in Methuen. I was a child care counselor. It was basically just I worked with mostly boys like 8 to 12, that like like late elementary. Um, Most of them were like there for like mental abilities, family status, a lot of different problems within the household, mostly a lot of behavioral issues. Um, that was a really good experience, just kind of working in kind of like their home setting. It was mostly just like getting them ready for the day, getting them accustomed to just working through all their challenges and just getting them to complete their goals each day. I also had another internship working in probation at a juvenile court. So it was kind of like the criminal side. Was working with like families, kids, like doing intakes, witnessing like court cases, court proceedings, all that. So it was very challenging, but it was also like very, like it opened up to that kind of is where I went more towards I knew I wanted to do more of the criminal side, seeing what all these kids and families had to go through. Um, and yeah, I graduated and now I'm in my second semester at Lesley. It's a very, the program's very, it's very like open. It's very, very friendly. It's a very small community of people. I'm in a lot of the same classes with the same people. and I'm in the Riverside. It's a new program, Riverside Scholars. So it's an internship program where you get an internship, one or two within the Riverside Community Care, it's an organization that provides mental health services, addiction treatment, suicide education, trauma. So I'll be starting that internship in my second year. So coming fall, I already interviewed. So I have a placement in Linfield. So I'll be starting there in a few months. But yeah, right now I'm really enjoying the program. It's just kind of getting my foot into the field. So yeah.
Great. Now, question for you at your stage, what have you found to be the biggest sort of difference or kind of thing you had to get used to between undergrad and grad, or what's sort of the biggest, I guess just the biggest difference for you that you're seeing right now and that you're in your second semester?
Yeah, so I think for me it's more like at least this program, I'm not sure about other programs, but it's very like it's a lot of independent work. It's a lot of like being able to manage your own time because like they offer the schedule is very open. You can kind of do whatever you want with it. Like this semester I'm taking weekend intensive classes. So, like I only there's a few weekends each class meets and it's just Friday through Sunday. You just kind of get through everything for two weekends and then you kind of manage your workload during the week. So you have a lot of time. If you have a full-time job, you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people I talk to, they work full time and the weekends work really well for them. But some people like the once or twice a week going in through the semester. It's just kind of similar to undergrad, but it's a lot more. You have to do your reading. You have to do your you have to stay on top of everything like that. But that's kind of what I've noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot more on you to kind of complete it because you're not meeting. Some classes don't meet as frequently, so there's a lot in between that you have to do on your own. So managing the time
Exactly.
is something different, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have a couple questions that I'm gonna give to the three of you, and then I'll probably repeat the same for our next group. But one question that um, people asked was about the benefits of going to school right after graduating versus waiting and having work experience first. Anthony, you went right away. Melissa, you went right away. Grayson, did you have time in between? I forget now.
No, so I went right away.
Right away.
I graduated in May and I started in August.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I was like, my mind
Yeah.
was working there. So for the three of you to start right after graduating, do you feel like it was what were the benefits, I guess, for you to do that? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in.
I can go.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like it depends on your self-awareness. So I knew like right off the bat that I was not going to go back if I didn't do it right off the bat. I personally went into a fully online program, so very similar to Anthony, like you have to be on top of yourself. I have like crippling ADHD, so definitely like it was a struggle for me to get myself to be organized and on top of things. So I decided to go right into it, but I also had a lot of experience. I did like two like internships that I opted myself into when I was at Merrimack, like over the summer, that I didn't have to do. And I also did internships through Merrimack and I was employed for 6 months after I graduated before I started. So I think like I just felt like I was ready. But I feel like if you feel like you're lacking real life experience, I would consider taking at least like 6 months to a year to like do something in the field.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think having the experience during undergrad helped because you knew the direction you were going in, so it wasn't a question, which is great. Right.
I can go.
Yeah.
I feel like kind of the same as Grace, and I had a lot of experiences where it like narrowed it in for me. So I knew the population I wanted to work with. I knew what I wanted to do. I kind of like knew where I wanted to be, and the only thing that, was in the way of that was getting the degree. So I feel like I kind of knew what I like needed to do to get to where I wanted to be. And I kind of, same thing. I would have never gone back if I didn't go right out of undergrad. I think like just the unstructured break for me with like my brain just does not work. Like I knew, like filling that time and what I was going to do, I think it was just easier for me to kind of just like matriculate right in, especially because I was staying at Merrimack. So yeah, I think it was an easier choice for me only because I knew like my population and I want, where I want to be and what I want to do. But I think if you don't know, then I think that taking that time is a good kind of, avenue for kind of, weeding out like what do I want, what do I don't want, and kind of like testing that out and using that time to do so.
Absolutely. And what about for you, Anthony?
Yeah, very similar to what both of you said. Just I kind of knew what I wanted to do, which is not like most people. I knew I wanted to go and I knew I wanted to do counseling. I knew this is the direction I wanted to go to, but also I did know I wasn't going to go back. Um, but also for me, like I'm after just going through undergrad, going through my experience, I feel like I was at the peak of my like knowledge, going right into the field with what I already know. And I think that was really helpful. And I think I feel like I have a step over some of the people in my program, or like to kind of help them and work with them and like where they come from. Some people have a little different experience than me. So we kind of bounce off each other with ideas, and it's very helpful, and it's makes the classes more enjoyable and just so like more of like a discussion, and it's really good. It's really great.
Mm. One question from the chat is, you know, did you fear falling behind if you took time off? Some people said, I wouldn't go back. Or you all, I think, said you might not have gone back if you didn't go right away. So was that sort of a thought of falling behind if you had that year of not moving forward with grad school?
I feel like for me, I'm really young for my grade, so I turned 21 like probably 4 months before we graduated from Merrimack, so I'm super young. So I feel like I wouldn't have felt like I was so much falling behind because I think that I was already kind of ahead of like everyone else my age, like in terms of like education wise. But I do feel like I was eager to get it over with, like knowing that I would be young and like right now I'm 24 with my master's, so like I've possessed it quickly. But I do think that, you know, the time like if I hadn't gone right into it, like we said, like I don't think that I would have gone back. So that was kind of the fear of falling behind in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. What about for Melissa or for Anthony? Any kind of feelings like that moving into it?
Yeah, I think I would have felt like I was falling behind if I didn't go right out undergrad because I feel like I wouldn't have seen myself going at all. So
Mhm.
then I feel like I would have that fear of like, oh, I didn't do it now, and then finding like that motivation and like the drive to like, initiate like all the applications and stuff. I just knew like I felt like I was in that like education mentality. And so like the second that I dropped out of it, I just knew it was going to be so hard to like maybe work full time and then like find the time to do the application or, like volunteer and then find the time. So I felt like living in like the education, like the world of college and kind of thinking about it was a lot easier than like being at home and kind of feeling like I was doing all of that, you know, not on my own, but kind of without like the structure would have been a lot harder for me personally. So, and I think what Grayson said too, like feeling like you're young and you already have your master's can be kind of like empowering too, especially when you're like new in the field. So, I don't know. I feel like there's different reasons why everyone does what they do, but I feel like for me, I would have had that kind of, feeling of like, oh, I'm feeling a little behind because I know I wouldn't see myself kind of initiating like the work that needs to get done to get there.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Right. What about for you, Anthony?
Yeah, very, very similar to what both of you said. Like I think I wouldn't I don't know if I'd be behind. Like I feel in my head I'd be behind, but I know I wouldn't because I'd still have like because if I was working in the fields, I would still have all the experience, all the knowledge I have. But again, I think it's just more the time. Like I would be working and then considering my master's going for that, and then
Mhm.
I would get too content working where I am or where I would be. So I really don't know if I see myself just going back and making like a switch or
Yeah,
doing anything like that.
Can I add one thing?
absolutely. Yeah.
I think that if you know, like like I spoke about earlier, like having self-awareness, if you know that you can go back,
Mhm.
like take the and you feel like you're not like prepared to go into grad school yet or you don't have enough experience, like take the experience over going straight to school because I saw people that I was friends with that were in my program go into first year internships and their masters blindsided. Like my first internship was at a partial hospitalization program. So I was dealing with some like heavily suicidal people as a first internship in grad school. So and I saw people around me who had only had like daycare experience and like they were like so thrown off. So if you don't feel like you've had, the experience in kind of your wheelhouse yet, because your internships in grad school aren't gonna be exactly what you want to do. So if you feel like you haven't really gotten enough experience or at least built up enough bandwidth to deal with things that you're not prepared to deal with, I would take the time. And if you're focusing on traveling, that's also great. Go travel. But UNH does like, I think I could have gone to Europe. Like they do abroad through UNH grad school. So if it's about that, you can always look into places where you can go.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very glad you said that because that is a really important distinction to make is for one, just having a little bit of that background so you're not beyond your depths in an internship and you have confidence going into it. And also, so you are sure it's the right path, right, for you to be going on. So having some experience prior is really important. And I think that that is huge, and there's no pressure to start right away unless you know for sure that is the right decision. So for everyone here, you had experience, you knew what your next step was going to be. There wasn't a reason to wait. For other people, taking time is smart. So, before we move on to our next group, we have a question that's for Anthony specifically, around, being a male in the counseling field. The question asks if there's a negative stigma or do you feel like a minority in the field? What is it in your group? Is there a lot of other males in your cohort or in your group, or is it when I was at Leslie, there wasn't that many, but it's grown. So what's that like from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to stop you to address that question.
Oh, good.
Yeah, like there's not many. There's a like so my incoming cohort is there were about 50 of us. I think there's maybe 7 or 8 males, I think. In most of my classes, like they're pretty small classes. It's like typically 10 to 15 for like 10 to 15 and then there's some of like the classes like everyone has to take those are a little bigger, but in the smaller classes I've been the only male in a few of them. Um and there are some classes where it's like yeah, you feel like it can be difficult like opening up at first and just kind of like getting adjusted to everything. But like I see it as like going into the fields, like addressing the question. I see it more as like an advantage because I think there's a lot of men out there that maybe struggle with opening up, going to counseling, or and maybe seeing a male therapist will
Mhm.
help them, and maybe that's something they need. So that's
Yeah,
how I see it.
I agree. I know from a perspective of having hired clinicians or wanting, or, when I was in community mental health hiring, I always wanted to see resumes from male clinicians because we worked with a lot of schools, and in middle school and high school, those they don't want to talk to a female about stuff that's going on with them all the time, mostly as they get into like high school aged and there's so many more transitions. And adult men too. I think some seek out counseling with men for specific reasons, and it's just necessary. So you could have an advantage in getting a job because it's something that you have a different perspective on, which is nice. Just like people should look at specializing in areas too, because that gives you something else to offer. It's just a different perspective, which is good. So great. Thank you. All right. There are some other questions, but I'm going to save them because I would love to jump in to hear from Kelsey.
Hi.
Huh.
So I'm Kelsey. Do you want me to just talk about what I
Yeah.
do?
Sorry, you
Okay.
you came in because you were working prior. So if I could hear about sort of from undergrad to now what that path has looked like, and also um, you're doing something in a different field than some of the other speakers, which is awesome. Hearing about kind of how you came to that decision when you were an undergrad going into graduate school too.
Okay. Yeah, so I have kind of a different path from my undergrad. So I majored in criminology and psychology at Merrimack. And so I did a lot of internships at Merrimack. Um, Originally I thought I wanted to be a social worker, so that was kind of the path I was on. And then through my internships, I kind of decided I wanted to go into healthcare. Um, so I actually was introduced to OT, so occupational therapy, by one of my professors. So she like mentioned it in one of the classes. So I kind of researched OT, what that was all about. And it kind of sparked my interest. So I did a additional internship, which also was with a like research project. I don't know what they call it at Merrimack, but it was like an additional to my coursework to kind of figure out more about OT. In the field of OT, and I honestly fell in love with it. So then I started taking courses to go to grad school. So adding those to my coursework as well, on top of my majors. And then um, I went to Springfield College for my master's in occupational therapy. And then from there, now I work in pediatrics. So I am an OT for a company called Cheshire Fitness Zone in Connecticut. So I recently just moved back to Connecticut. I'm originally from Connecticut. And I'm working in outpatient pediatrics, so in like a clinic-based setting, but I also am a contract employee for a public school as well. Yes.
So what was it for you specifically, since it's a different path? What was it that kind of made you fall in love with it when you were doing, like, I love sharing that you did an additional internship because you were exploring more and like needing to figure out if that was the right path. What was it that kind of clicked for you?
So I really fell in love with like the field of OT, like really allows you to build that rapport with your patients. So I really wanted something like that where when I did my internship for social work in a police department, I just felt like I wasn't getting as much as like that face-to-face interaction, building that rapport. So I feel like OT you really get to do that and you're like make a big impact. Not that social workers don't do that either, but in like a different way. And you're more like specifically I fell in love with pediatrics, so I did my internship in a pediatric setting. And I liked that you got to work with the family, with the teachers, with the student. So yeah.
When you do work with the school, what's that like, sort of the what it looks like and what you're doing kind of with those kids?
So I do direct service as well as consult. So basically, I will take the kids on my caseload out of their classroom, and we have like an OT room, and we work on skills like fine motor skills, so handwriting, visual, perceptual, visual motor. So any like if they need any help with like scissor cutting, um, kind of sequencing as well. So we do a lot of like projects. So like we'll do like you have to cut, color, and paste or to work on sequencing. So different stuff like that. And then consult services, typically I will either email or go into the classroom and speak with the teacher and provide them with strategies, whether that be sensory strategies, if the kid benefits from movement, breaks, so stuff like that.
Right. Well, it's cool too because I think one appealing thing about OT, and I've had some students talk about going into like speech and language pathology. It's that same drive that brought them to psychology and why you wanted to do social work initially, of that working with someone and helping them kind of meet a goal and really improve what's going on in their life. And you're doing that through this. It's different than therapy, like being a um, mental health clinician, but it's like these are such skills they need for their lives, like to be successful. And um,
Mhm.
so I think it's a really great option for people too that know that they want to be in the like helping field, but not have it directly be like the social work or mental health side, even though that definitely relates and comes in. And I think working with an OT can improve all of those things for kids and adults.
Mhm.
But I think it's a really nice avenue, to say like there's different options if your goal is to help people and help them reach goals and improve their life. So
Mhm.
it's very cool. Awesome. Thank you. We will definitely have questions for um oh, there's one for you specifically. So I'll ask now before I go with Angelo. Um for you, how was it going through kind of the interviews and applications to go to school and then eventually work in the medical field, having had the psychology major?
So for grad school, at least when I was applying, every program had like their list of courses that you needed to take. Um, so that was a little stressful because they're all different. So I first started by like emailing the program and like making sure like my coursework was fine before going to like say like, oh, I'm gonna apply and like get an interview.
Yeah.
Um, so like just making sure to like you have all the coursework and like all that settled. But then for interviews, I didn't interview for a lot of my schools that I applied to. I had like two big interviews. I didn't apply to a lot of grad schools because I know I wanted to stay in the New England area. And I also wanted a master's in OT, which OT is slowly transitioning to a doctorate.
Oh,
Um, so I there weren't that many programs that I applied to. But when I did go for interviews, they were kind of stressful.
mhm.
Um, they, but every interview was different. Some were more like just questions about like your background and why you want to be an OT, why do you want to go into an OT field, where others were more like interview questions, and like a panel. So like one interview I went to, there was a bunch of us and like we all had to like raise our hand to like answer a question and like jump in, and it was more like a kind of like this, like a forum. Um but and then applications. So I don't know if it's the same, but most of the schools use the same system. So you would just upload like your essay as, and usually it's pretty general as to like why you want to go into the OT program. And then some schools have like additional essays as well. Like specifically, like I went to Springfield College, so I think Springfield did have one where you had to say like, why do you choose Springfield? Um, and yeah, and then you just upload all your coursework, and then you need recommendations as well. And then as for applying for jobs, so I have been in a couple different jobs, just from like moving and kind of me and my husband just bought a house in Connecticut, so we're like moving all over the place. Um, so I feel like my experience has been good with interviews. I feel like having the background, I feel like it's gotten easier having the background in OT and being able to justify like why are you qualified for this job.
Mhm.
I feel like in the beginning it was a lot harder being a new grad. And I think it just was the confidence of like I don't have that much background, but like working in the field because we do two field works. But just justifying like you have so I went into skilled nursing. I did field work in skilled nursing as well. So I was like, I have experience and I learned from my supervisor and I feel like I would be confident coming in. So it's more just like confidence, I feel like. That really helps with interviews.
Well, and I think having that, knowing that you're going into a program that you have to have experience as a part of the program helps. That builds up your confidence in, I know
Mhm.
what I'm doing, I can handle this. And I do think there's probably parts of your undergrad that were helpful because you understood different aspects of working with people in different ways. So it doesn't all like go out the window just because it's not the exact same major, like you're using it. So that's great. Excellent. All right. Thank you. If there's any other questions for Kelsey, just put them right there in the chat. But next up, we'll hear from Angela.
Hello. So my name's Angela. I'm currently in my fourth year in my clinical PsyD program at William James College. I graduated from Merrimack in 2021 and I had a criminology and psychology double major. And in terms of how I got there from like figuring out what I wanted to do, I actually was similar to Anthony, where I thought I was going to be more on the criminology side and doing that. And I had even questioned, going into the police work directly. But then, I was actually talking to Dr. White during my time at Merrimack, and she asked me what I wanted to do. And, I told her about like the profiling, things like that. She's like, that's not really a thing. And I was like, oh, okay. And, my lifelong dreams were gone. But she said, but forensic psychology is a thing. And she talked about that. And so I really think that developing or having those support systems in Merrimack are really helpful and definitely, guided me through the process. So, checking in with her and asking her questions, I decided to do the clinical PsyD route, and I had plans or thoughts or when I went into the program thinking I was going to do forensics, I was going to do testing. I didn't want to do any therapy whatsoever. And part of the program at William James is you do an internship, you have to do a child year and you have to do an adult year, regardless of what your interest is. And so I did my child year first. It was at an elementary school and it was doing school counseling. So I worked with like kindergarten through fourth grade and I absolutely fell in love with it and just really enjoyed working with the kids, doing like therapy with them. And so then as I went through the program, you have to do an internship every year. So my second year was at a partial hospitalization program with adults. And I also really liked that, which was a nice soothing considering I, started the internship with the children thinking I'd had absolutely no interest in working with kids in a clinical setting. And then I thought like, okay, well, if I didn't think I'd like that, maybe I'll hate working with adults, but I also really enjoyed working with them too. And that was more in a group therapy style. So then I also started to get outpatient work. So the following year, I was at a private practice and I worked with the youngest client I had was 5, and then the oldest was 70. So I had a pretty good span. A lot of it was kids, and that's partially currently like there's a need everywhere, but there's definitely a lot less either availability or just like physical clinicians like working with children. So a lot of my caseload there was children. And then now I'm in my APA internship at Mass General Salem Hospital, and I'm doing outpatient where I'm actually getting to work with both kids and adults, which is great. And then I'm also doing neuropsych testing, which is around more with children and adolescents. So that's really been great. And then kind of through my internships, I've some with I've continued working with them. So for the partial, I worked with them through the summer before my fall internship started. And then for the private practice, I'm actually still there as a fee-for-service clinician. So I do that. And then I also have like my coursework and doing the classes and everything through grad school right now too. So, yeah.
Well, one thing that is great is through staying connected, you're building your network too. So you're getting to know people, doing all these things and connecting and staying connected, which is really helpful kind of moving forward. So that's really exciting. When you leave, when you're done with the program, what sort of is your hope for kind of next steps after you're done with this program?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely in that I feel like those two go well together, both networking and what are my plans for after graduating? So my program ends, it'll be like graduating in June of 2026. So I still have a touch more to figure out. But part of with the doctorate is one of the options is to do a postdoc, which is basically another internship, but you're also working because you're done with your grad school, but you're working toward licensure. So it's kind of additional support and supervision. But it's typically more full-time than maybe some other internships and things like that. So I am thinking and considering that and hoping to try to find a place that does both therapy and neuropsych testing because that's what I'm hoping for career-wise too, of having that mix of both therapy and the testing. And for the therapy, I like to work with the lifespan, but I also like to do like individual, couples, family. And then with the partial, I did group work, which I enjoy as well. So hoping for a mix, which can sometimes be hard to find, but hoping that at least the skill set I can offer and hopefully that will work out.
Well, the nice thing is, through all of the field experience, you're gaining all those skills, but also seeing you like it. I want to build and do all of these things, and that's a nice place to be than feeling like, okay, only one of these things fits me. I actually want to do all of it. So it's hard because it's hard to find sometimes, but also it's nice because you have more options, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm sure we will have more questions, but I'm going to
Mhm.
jump over to Julia, to have you tell us about your kind of post Merrimack journey, what you've done and what you're up to now.
Yeah, of course. Hi guys, I'm Julia. I am also in the middle of my workday, so if I miss anything, please let me know because I jumped on a little late. Um, I went to Merrimack from 2018 to I graduated a semester early, so I was the class of 2022, but technically I graduated in 2021. When I was at Merrimack, I was definitely involved in a lot of things. I was an FYE mentor. I worked at the O'Brien Center. Um, Other things that I am not remembering at the moment. But as for like internships, I was looking for an internship during the thick of COVID, which was kind of difficult because a lot of practices, agencies, etc., were closed doing telehealth. It was kind of hard to find anywhere that was even accepting interns. I ended up finding an internship through JRI. In Lowell. And although I didn't do any clinical work, I worked directly with the supervisor there to build a manual for the Youth at Risk Conference, which they put on yearly. I believe it's at Endicott College still, but like providers, therapists, anyone really in the field can go to this conference for either like continuing education credits to learn, whatever it is. So I built that manual which in theory, looking back, I didn't do any clinical work, but it was a great experience because I was reaching out to agencies to see if they wanted to be in the manual, to see if they wanted to go to the conference, things like that. So I have like a very wide knowledge of different types of agencies, but also I got to connect with so many people, um, which was really great. When COVID kind of got a little bit better, I moved to Nantucket for the summer, and which I realize is quite crazy. I don't know how I got so lucky, but I did work at Fairwinds Counseling Center less clinical work there as well. I was a front desk administrative intern, so taking calls from clients, answering any really like first line questions. Um, so I didn't do the exact therapy, but was like anything you would think of like as an administrator to do, making client appointments, doing like intake questions, things like that. Which that internship was kind of for me like, okay, I didn't do clinical work necessarily, but I was in some ways working directly with the clients and the other providers at the agency. So I got to see how things were. And because I did work there, they let me observe some um, sessions. If the clients allowed, I was able to sit in and see how um, the clinicians were working with the clients. After that, graduated from Merrimack, applied to Boston College for the mental health counseling program. I applied to a few other places. I obviously applied to Merrimack, Boston College, BU. I think that was really it. And I was really struggling between BC and Merrimack. Um, Merrimack was a perfect option, and in hindsight, I wish I stayed at Merrimack. But I was kind of in the, I just spent 4 years here, let me have a new opportunity. Um, and oh, also when I was at Merrimack, I did the um, program that they offer where you can take master's classes in your senior year of college. So I also got kind of a glimpse of what the master's classes would look like. I can't exactly remember what it's called um, at this moment, but I know they do offer that. Um, so went to Boston College. There, it was a 2-year program. I majored or whatever, my master's was in mental health counseling with a concentration in child and family mental health. They also have a few other concentrations that you can do. I think one is like play therapy, one is trauma, and there might be another one in there. Um, During my internship, I was at a partial hospitalization program, similar to Angela. So I did, it was dual diagnosis group, and it was substance use and mental health. So not necessarily, it wasn't necessary that you needed to have a substance use issue, but most of our clients did. Um, I realized that I didn't want to do group work while I was working there. I loved the environment. I loved being around my clients all the time. I loved being able to also do case management while I was there, which is a bit different than actual therapy, but n not really. So I was running groups, I was doing case management, um, and then little things, especially with the substance use of it all, making sure people were getting to their screenings so that they could check their levels and things like that. Um, but like I said, I realized when I was in the thick of it that I did not want to do group work, only because I'm not the type of person that can, as I'm speaking to a group of people right now, but in the therapy um, world, I don't know that that was a good fit for me. I like to be more individual with people, and I felt a lot of pressure. Um, but everyone experiences it differently. There were groups that I loved to run, and then there were some that I felt like I didn't maybe necessarily have enough experience to run. But my coworkers were great. Everyone was great. They gave really good support. And when I did graduate from Boston College, I considered even going back there because of the environment that I was in, because of honestly, all of the clients were amazing. Um, and it was something I kind of wanted to stick to, but I couldn't get out of the having to do group work because it was something that always made me anxious. Um, so I didn't end up there, but where I did end up was I work at Rollins Counseling Center in Norwood, Mass. Carrie Rollins, who's the owner, has a few other locations, Westboro, New Hampshire, and somewhere else that I can't think right now. So it's a private practice, group private practice. Um, I work with really anyone. I have my youngest client is 5, and my oldest client is in his 70s. So I have a wide range of people that I work with. When I first started, I had some families. Now they've all transitioned out and discharged, so I'm not working with any families right now, just individuals, but definitely demographics, definitely mental health, diagnoses, all the different things. Um, I like the private practice. My schedule is very flexible, which I really love. I work from home on Mondays. I'm in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I don't work Fridays, which is great. I don't know that that's necessarily how a lot of practices are, but I think private practices have a little bit more leniency with your schedule than maybe a typical agency would. Um, so that's kind of why, honestly, I went in this direction. I knew I wanted to work one-on-one, and I kind of wanted to have the flexibility of what my schedule would look like. But I did apply to many different places. Um, and this kind of just made the most sense for me. It's also 2 minutes from my house, so it's a pretty great commute. But yeah, I feel like I just rambled for about 20 minutes. So
No, all good.
all I have for now.
That was great. So, and you brought up something too that I'm hearing as a theme. I'm gonna highlight some other people and ask you all these questions, but um one of the themes really as I'm listening, which I love, is really the experience is informing next steps. Experiences informing um what you like and what you don't like, which I always tell students it's okay to not like something because you might end up figuring out it's not the right direction to go in, and that's just as informative and helpful as finding the absolute perfect fit. Um, so I feel like hearing about things that brought you to a place of, I don't like this, I don't think it's what I want, is great to hear because it's informs that next step, which is important. And also, I think something that you talked about, Julia, and then also just thinking about other people's thoughts and what they're doing is thinking about what's the right environment for you and how it'll like work into your lifestyle and what you need and thinking about scheduling, hearing I know Grayson had to run, perfect example, right? She had to run and deal with an emergency and she's at a school, so that's a very set schedule, not as much control over when you're doing things. And Kelsey, I don't know how your schedule works. If I know you're contracted with the school, but I don't know how flexible things are for you. Um, or at other settings you've worked at, what that's been like. But it's definitely something to think about. And I'm curious for some people, especially kind of for Julia and Kelsey and Melissa who are working right now, kind of how did you inform that kind of decision for yourself in terms of picking a place versus making that like work-life balance and scheduling wise and that? I don't know if that played a factor in sort of picking where you were going to work. It sounds like for Julia, it definitely did for you. What about for you, Kelsey, kind of what yours looks like and
So currently, I'm actually leaving my job. I'm getting a different job because of the flexibility.
oh,
So for mine, so I work in the school during the day, but then I go to the clinic for after school hours. So I work for 10-hour days currently. Um, but previously I worked in Birth to Three, where you kind of make your own schedule. And I just received a new job offer for another Birth to Three place. So I'm moving back into that just for more of the flexibility. But with the school, so I kind of schedule with the teachers. So it's kind of like on their classroom schedule. And every district is different in Connecticut, but my district works on like a letter day schedule. And it rotates. So scheduling with everyone is super complicated when you don't work for the district. But everyone has been super great as in my district. But I know other districts, people have other, because there's other contract employees as well in the other districts. But yeah, so I'm actually going back to Berk to three. So still working in pediatrics, but because of that flexibility, in Berk to three, you can like make your own schedule as long as it works for the family. So I really like the flexibility of that.
and I think that it's something that as an undergraduate, you might not be thinking of right now, or it might be, but I think it feels far off and having to think about like what works for me to balance my life. But it's something I wish was more emphasized. I know when I was an undergrad is thinking about what does that mean for you and your schedule and these different environments you can work in, different settings, different age groups. Melissa, your schedule. And I remember those days working with school age kids, heavy from like 2 to 3 p.m. on, and an expectation of being available until 7, 8 o'clock at night because you were working with kids that went to school. So if you were working with them, you're doing after school, um, in your position. So, that's something to think about. And um, I don't know if you have any thoughts on sort of scheduling and why you picked your role and things like that too.
Yeah. So the practice I'm at does like traditional and non-traditional. So they do like holistic counseling too. So the staff is sort of split between like there's yoga, there's somatic services, there's talk therapy. We have like a yoga space and a yoga room. So I knew that that was also something that was really important to me, like the culture of here. There's yoga mats, there's plants, just kind of like the environment really mattered to me. And when I interviewed, it was like really clear to me that they valued that. And definitely the 2 days off that I have too. I think just in terms of like, paperwork not piling up, I feel like, I get out late on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, but then I have like that time, all day Tuesday, all day Friday to be able to like do my notes and to not be stressed and to not, kind of live in that like, you know, go, go, go. I really haven't found myself in that. And I think I like really value that. So, I think when I interviewed and I like saw the place, I think that definitely mattered to me too. That like sterile environment was like not kind of what I was, looking for in like the therapy space. And so I think just like the environment is as important as, kind of like the scheduling and sort of, what you value too. And I think that kind of came like full circle for me, um, like in the interview and then actually being here and kind of what's valued here too.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are all important things. I think it's hard to wrap your mind around it sometimes when you're at school that those are considerations, but it's important to think about that. We have a few more minutes, so I'm gonna ask a couple of the questions that were sent in earlier, and people can jump in if they feel like they're want to answer it. Um, One that I liked was, what is something that you feel like it's important for students to do after graduation? That was the question, so I don't know in what direction. So anything you feel like is important for students to do after graduating from undergrad. Is there anything you would say is something important for them to do?
I can jump in. I think something that comes to mind is definitely like you mentioned, Katie, it can kind of go a lot of different ways, but I think that it's okay to not know. Like I definitely like graduated like thinking like, okay, this is exactly what's going to happen. This is what I want. This is like it's going to go this way. And so many times it did not go that way, whether it was because, like Julia was mentioning, like, okay, I didn't, like this aspect or things like that. Like, something, even though I really liked the counseling with kids and I loved the school I was at, I don't think that school is where I'm meant to be. Like there were different aspects of that work that are different than outpatient work with kids. And, so it's okay to, like, as you're figuring it out, to not know and to just kind of explore and figure out what works and what doesn't. And so I think sometimes we want to have like an exact plan, an exact, like, okay, this is exactly what's going on and this is how it's going to go. And it's okay that if it doesn't go that way and if it kind of just you go with what comes and you make decisions. And then maybe as time goes on, you go, okay, this isn't working for me, or I don't like this, or I do really like it. So I think, finding the space that it's okay to not have a direct plan and to explore different options can be huge.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I'm gonna ask another question, but if someone has an answer for the other one, feel free to jump in on that one too. Um, I know that you answered this a little bit when I asked you a million questions to fill out before you joined this panel, but is there a kind of skill or experience that you gained during your time at Merrimack that was really valuable? Some of you talked about some of those experiences, but is there anything kind of that stands out as this felt really valuable and it helped me in this way? So there. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I did the Double Warrior program, and I think that was sort of like a glimpse into what it would feel like to be like in the coursework and kind of doing the work. And I think that was sort of like what I needed to be able to be like, oh, this is what I like, or this is what I don't like. So I feel like, if that's, something that you can squeeze into your schedule to do it, because I was sort of like, oh, I don't know, and then I did it, and that was sort of like another thing that solidified it for me. So I think if you can get a glimpse of like what is this actually going to be like, that it's really cool to have that kind of before starting grad school, and it kind of takes away that like anticipation of, what it's going to be like. So that definitely that definitely helped me a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I don't know if anyone, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, it was just more just like putting myself out there in terms of like internships, doing as many things as I could do, taking advantage of like opportunities. Like there were also times where I had like many interviews for like internships or like even jobs, and I just like turned down, but just getting that like interview experience, that really helped me a lot. And just for like preparing for grad school and all of that, I think has like helped me kind of get to where I am.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like any of those times you can just have the experience, even if it doesn't lead to something, it's just good because it'll make the next thing easier and better for you. So that's great. Absolutely. Um, seeing if there's any other questions. I want to make sure I'm grabbing everything. Um, one was a question, and I know that you've had varying levels of experience out in the field. Do you feel like there's anything that's changed since you've started working or started doing even grad school internship sort of in the field that's changed for you or that you've seen shift and change over the last year even? And also kind of looking at what you feel like the future is for your profession, not necessarily for your job, but like where do you see it going and kind of what the needs are based on what you've experienced. That was a lot crammed into one question, so I can repeat, but go ahead, Julia.
In the little bit or the first part of the question, the
Yeah.
first thing that came to my head was imposter syndrome. And I feel like people talk about this a lot, but not enough. Um, Definitely in the first little bit of my career, I mean, even now, I do experience imposter syndrome all the time, which is like, um, if people don't know what it is, basically like feelings of doubt, inadequacy, all of those things to provide care to the people that you're working with. Um, and I think a big thing for me was when I was working at the PHP, and I didn't mention this other job that I had, but I worked in Lynn at JRI for a little while, and I did in-home therapy, which I completely forgot to mention. But I think working with families and adults, sometimes I would sit back and be like, who am I to be like giving you this advice, not necessarily advice, but listening to your problems with being a mother or, going through all these experiences that I've never experienced. And I had people push back on me before and been like, how are you to sit here when you don't have kids? Or how are you to sit here when you're not from another country? Things like that. Um, the point of that all is it's very true and those feelings are very valid to have. But sitting with that, like talking to your supervisor, talking to coworkers, talking to professors, and working things out and just sitting with it and knowing that, like, yes, maybe I'm not from a different country and yes, maybe I'm not a mother, but I do have these skills. I went to school for this amount of time. I'm doing these internships. I'm working in this so that I can get the skills that I need to get to a place where I feel more comfortable. Um, and I think I experienced it a lot during my internship and the first half of my career. I think now that I'm more established, even at this job, I feel a little bit better in it, but it hasn't gone away. So just know that you're like not alone in all of that. And to just lean on people, especially supervisors and other people that have been in the field for a long time, because I'm sure that they'll validate that that's very real as well.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a really important thing to think about, especially as young professionals starting out and sort of being a few years in, or where students are just sort of getting ready to take that step in one direction or another. You're gonna have those moments where you are questioning everything 1 minute and then feeling really great about it the next, and having people that you can trust to talk to, both supervisors, peers. That's why networking and staying connected is important, because you're going to connect with people at all these different moments in your career, and it feels good to go back and have those conversations. And I know for myself, I have moments where I'm like, oh, if I was only to work with that client now, I would be so good at dealing with what that was. And I felt like I didn't know what I was managing 10 years ago, but now I'd be an expert if I could just go back in time for a little bit. But I also realized I did have things to offer. I had skills. I had to be confident in what I was offering that person in that moment was what they needed. And I think clinically speaking, for people thinking of like the clinical route or just really just working in general, if you're doing the best you can and putting out everything you can and feeling good about what you're doing at the end of the day, you're doing great. If you can feel confident that you're doing everything you can in the work that you're doing. Um, and I will say, I so have to find this clip and I'll send it to my students. I'll send it to all of you who on this panel. But Alona Mar, who's the rugby player, have you seen her talk about imposter syndrome? It's great because someone asked her if she had it, and she was like, no, why would I? Like, it's very great to listen to and it'll make you feel good. Like, I need to feel like that too. So I'm gonna find that clip because she talks about being asked about it and really feeling confident to say, like, no, like I'm good at what I do and I know I am and I recognize my skills. And it's important to kind of have people that can help you get to that point and talk about yourself that way. That's how you're really gonna kind of take those next steps. So, I'm trying to see, I don't think I have other questions. I think I covered ones that were sent in. If people have a minute and they want to send one more question in to our panel, that would be great. Any kind of last minute words to the students that will kind of hear from you right now or listen to this later on? Any kind of things you might want to tell them or wish someone told you, I think is always nice to hear. Like as an undergrad, what's something you would have liked to have heard or anything kind of as a parting message?
And then kind of going off the video you were talking about of like trusting in yourself and your skills, but also just kind of trusting in the path, like it'll all work out. Like I think sometimes, especially as graduation's encroaching, it's both an exciting time, but also can be a time of like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. And when you have friends that are like, oh, I've already secured my job, or I like, am applying or got accepted into grad school, and it can feel like an exciting time, but also a very stressful time. And just, you know, being able to kind of give yourself the assurance that it works out and that you'll be able to look back and be like, oh, it was so clear this whole time, but you just didn't know. So I think just kind of trusting in in yourself and the path that happens. Well,
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. I don't have any extra questions. Any last things? I don't want to I'm putting everyone on the spot to say things, um, but I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing from everyone. I always love seeing people that I haven't seen in a little while and hearing what they're up to. So, um, I'm sure I'll be in touch again. You have been very generous in offering contact information. So if students have questions, they can ask, which is great. And other than that, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. We love hearing from our alumni, so I have a feeling that I'll be in touch again. So just look out for that, but I appreciate it very much. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks so much for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks. Thank you.